Has it been good so far? Let's give it up for the Houston team that made this all happen. Hill Day, and there's a young man by the name of Desmond on Mayor Turner's staff back here. Go on, wave your hand. This young man is making it happen. Recent graduate of Howard University. This guy has a future. Y'all look out for him. So I'm going to turn this over to Mayor Giles in just a moment, but let's do something special. It's been mentioned a couple times that today is National Voter Registration Day. So I'm going to ask you to pull out your cell phone. Everybody pull out the cell phone. Don't act like you don't have one. Don't play. And I want you to go to the text feature. Just open up a blank text. And in the message, here's what I want you to write. Hello, my dear friend. When you're done, say, I'm done. Comma. Because I love you, I'm reminding you that today is National Voter Registration Day. Period. Now make sure you get registered today. Period. It's important, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Now I want you to send that to someone in your contacts who you know is not registered to vote. Got it? Huh? I'm sorry? No, I can't remember that. That came off the top of my head. Dear friend, because I love you, I am reminding you that today is National Voter Registration Day, period. Remember to register to vote today, comma, dumbass. No, just teasing. Now send that to someone who you know is not registered to vote. When you've sent it, said, I sent it. Say it again. I sent it. All right, we listen for a few more. Now, y'all put your hands together and welcome the great mayor from Mesa, Arizona, the Honorable Mayor Giles.
Thank you. I don't know about you guys, but I just sent that to my adult family members. I've got kids that are all should be registered to vote, but to go ahead and take a selfie of yourself, and add that to the text. That might help. Thank you so much, Mayor Turner, Mayor Hancock, for convening us on this so important topic. I am, as has been said, I'm Mayor Giles, the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, and I'm honored to be a co-host of this event, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm very honored, actually, to give the introduction for today's keynote speaker, Mr. Rusty Bowers. Speaker Bowers and I are both from Mesa, Arizona, and we have a few other things in common. We both hold degrees from BYU and Arizona State University. We share some of the same constituents. We share the same faith, and we even share the same political party affiliation. We also share being censured by that party because of the things that we've said about our elections. And we both love the great state of Arizona. But here's where things start to shift. Just one of us is known for our musical talent. That's not me. If you've ever heard Speaker Bowers play his guitar and sing I Love You, Arizona, look it up on YouTube. I hope it's there, Rusty. Then you are really missing out. Speaker Bowers has more than a flair for music. He's also a successful professional visual artist, both a painter and a sculptor. Quite an amazing, talented man. And he has a ranching background, and he's also been professionally very active in teaching. I think he just might be the definition of a Renaissance man. On a more serious note, most people have recently come to know Speaker Bowers after he was thrust into a national political spotlight. But in Mesa, we've known Speaker Bowers for years and have had the opportunity to watch him dedicate himself to public service and to the betterment of our community and our state, for which we are very grateful. Speaker Bowers has served in the Arizona legislature for 18 years, with the last 4 as Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives. He's been a stalwart public servant, a defender of the Constitution and religious freedom, a man of character, and an unwavering champion for our state. His service and actions are examples of commitment and willingness to do what he believes is right, even when there is immense pressure to make a different choice. He is a deserving recipient of the 2022 John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award for defending democracy at home and abroad. In a statement issued in response to receiving that award, I was struck by one particular quote. He said, quote, "Honoring my oath and the people's choices at the ballot box are not heroic acts. They are the least that Arizonans should expect from people elected to serve them," close quote. Now, in some ways, I disagree. Mr. Bowers is very worthy of being called a hero, and his conduct has been inspiring to all of us. And he is certainly a man of honor. But he is right. Standing up for democracy, protecting the integrity of our elections, and upholding the Constitution are things that we should all do, and they should be the norm. And protecting the integrity of elections in Arizona and for all Americans is something that I'm very proud of him for doing. These are the reasons that we are here today, and the reasons why many of us are in office. It's simply the right thing to do. Speaker Bowers, thank you for your years of service, of leadership, and service to Arizona. And without further ado, I'll turn the stage over proudly to the Speaker of the Arizona House, Mr. Russell Bowers.
I just want to be able to play the piano like that. So thank you to the interlude music. You don't know anything about me, with the exception of the good mayor, and so it's unusual for me to try to, especially on voter registration activities, and whoever's watching the watch, I need to have a hand, because when I get rolling, it might be slow to respond. I'd like to talk to you about an eye and a mouth and a message. The eye was looking back at me in a very dark place from the passenger vehicle of a Roadrunner, orange Roadrunner, deep in Mexico, and holding his cigarette. The crescent on the outside rim of the eye was staring back at me. The mouth was the mouth of my daughter as she whispered to her mother the last words she ever spoke: "I love you with all my heart." And the message is fear. And I'll talk more about that. I am a policymaker. I will soon not be after the last election. I can presently influence policy matters relative to voting. I have taken some decisions on bills that came before the legislature that brought me national attention, as well as other things. One is the assignment of a bill that would prohibit early voting, would require same-day voting and same-day counting, and then would give the legislature, without criteria, without any regulation, the right to overthrow the vote of the voters of Arizona. 2296. I assigned that bill to 12 committees. If I had 13, I would have assigned it to the Fire Regulation Ad Hoc Committee. And, well, I do not play with fundamental things. And I'd like to talk about those in reverse. My daughter was dying and caught COVID in the middle of it. This was early on in COVID when none of us knew what it meant or how it was conveyed or how potent it was or who the most affected people were. But at the time, the elderly, me, over the age of 65, me, were a prime group, a kind of a danger zone. And my wife and I, when she and our grandson who lived with us caught COVID, we were afraid. And so we went to my studio ranch up in the mountains near Arizona, which has since burned to the ground of all the fun things that have happened lately. And we said, if you have any problems, call us. We will come. We didn't get a call, even a call of how are you that day or that evening. And finally, in the middle of the night, sensing that there was something wrong, we came home. And she was comatose. And I was trying to revive her. Comatose. She had severe diabetes, and I didn't know how to give the shots. She's an adult, and I had to get right next to her and have her talk to me this close, knowing that she had COVID, but knowing that I couldn't stay away. And I would guess the same of all of you. The I had hitched a ride because my truck had run out of oil in the middle of the night. I worked in my artwork among the Tarahumara or Raramuri people of the mountains of Chihuahua in Mexico. I had been with some other artists. We were on our way home. My old Suburban ran out of oil. I was hitchhiking back to a gas station, a Pemex station. I was picked up in an orange Roadrunner. I didn't know at the time that they were the lead of a smuggling organization. And I slid across the long neck beer bottles. They were very intoxicated. They took me to the gas station. They kicked in the door. There was a little boy inside. He was terrified. I paid him for the oil and the door, and then begged that, kindly, I'll just walk back. You guys go ahead. And they said, no, we'll take you back. We'll take you back. We will take you back. And so I got back in, and they didn't take me back. And later down the road, heading south, further into Mexico, they pulled off in the darkness, and a truck pulled in front, and another in front, and another behind, and another behind. And the head came back and said to the driver, tell me where the patrols are. And he said, cállate, and he thumbs backwards over his shoulder, and the man turned on a flashlight and saw me sitting in the back seat and pulled the driver out, and somebody else took his place, and he yelled at somebody, and they climbed in the back seat with me. And I could hear him while I'm talking about how beautiful the night is and the stars. There was no moon. To the guys talking with me in the car, I could hear him telling the driver, take him out and get rid of him. And I was praying, oh God, please bless my family, bless my wife, take care of them. And he climbed back in. And the man to my right, who had been blowing smoke on me, took a cigarette and said, well, would you like a cigarette? And I said, I'm sorry, I can't accept it. I don't smoke. And he said, why? I said, because it's against my religion. And it was quiet, kind of like this. And he said, it's against your religion? To smoke? I said, yes. I'm sorry, no offense intended. He said, what religion is that? I said, people call us Mormons, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I'm wondering, what does this silence mean? And then the driver said, I used to be a Mormon. And I thought, what does that mean? And then he said, I'm taking him back. And the man next to me said, what? He said, I said, I'm taking him back. Get out. And the guy, it's a two-door. You had to lean forward. He got out. And the driver burned the tires off that 440 Roadrunner and got me back to my truck. And he said, get out on my side. And as I leaned the seat forward to climb out, he said, put the oil in your truck and get out of here. Which I did. 1 liter, didn't put all 5 in, just put 1 to get away. Now what does that mean? What if I had in my fear taken the cigarette? I certainly wouldn't be talking to you. What does it mean to the person who treated him good for the period of association with a faith? What does that person know about me? Nothing. But he saved my life, because that must have been a good association, at least for the time it lasted. What does it mean to you to think of a party or a principle or a deep belief in your family and in what you want between the two seeming poles of radicalism in our country, where we have the MS-13 on one side and the Sonoran Cowboys on the other, and everybody's caught in the middle, even of different parties, and thinking, isn't there a way we can work together on the things of education and transportation and health care, rather than radicalizing everything and pushing it so far that we wonder where we are? I affect the vote, the ability to vote, but I can't educate everyone on what they believe in, on what is true, on what is needed to defend, on what we have to do to keep America. That's what we all have to do. We're here to discuss voter access at the municipal level chiefly, and you know a whole bunch more about it than I do. I do the state level stuff and have proven to be marginally successful. But what about what we know and what we are educated to vote on and for, and who these people are, rather than polarizing with vicious rhetoric? And I do know that. Are we able to bridge among ourselves to set those two sides apart and get back to holding America together? One of my favorite political books, The Art Spirit by Robert Henry. Mr. Henry is a brilliant artist, but also a brilliant teacher. And he talks in depth about knowing the value of elements of art, the value of the element. And then he teaches us how to prioritize elements in art. And one great quote of Mr. Henry that I use constantly: when we know the relative value of things, and I think like tools in my studio, or the chessboard of the floor of the house, in my lethal chess, moving a bill between committees, etc. Once we know the value of things, we can do everything with them. We can build with them without destroying them. Under such conditions, we are enhanced by coming into contact with each other when we understand the value of each other. The study of art is the study of the relative value of things. The factors of a work of art cannot be used constructively until the relative values are known. And here's the line. Unstable governments, like unstable works of art, are such as they are because values have not been appreciated. And time-wise, what are we looking at, boss? I could see him nodding off on the back table. I have come through the experiences of life as you have come. Having a phone call from the president and Rudy, having them ask me for a committee. And I said, no, I've seen the circus. I'm not going to put the House of Representatives through this circus. This more of this, And he said, yeah, but you had 6,000 dead people vote and 200,000 illegals and 20,000 people who don't even live in Arizona. And I said, do you have the proof? Do you have the proof? And he said, yes, we do. I said, can you put the proof, the names of those individuals? And it would help if you told me how they voted. Can you put that on my desk? Because without proof, I would never take any action on your second request, and that is to replace the electors because of Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 and 3 of the Constitution. To do that, you have to prove that there was massive fraud and sufficient to cover the gap of 10,457 votes between Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump. No proof, no action. And that was the essence of my talk, no proof, no action. I didn't say that. I said, you just got to bring me the proof. We'll bring it. And that never happened. And then I said, well, I've got some great lawyers, and let's tie them in, and I pulled out my cell phone. Now it's my turn. Let's see, Mayor, if we can do this. I said, Mr. Trump, I don't even know how to tweet. I'm terrible with this thing, so watch. It'll be me telling my grandchildren while I tried to find my lawyer's phone number that I hung up on the President of the United States. And that's exactly what I did. I hung up on the President of the United States. And when Rudy called back and said, he's laughing. He thought that was pretty funny. I said, actually, it is pretty funny, but under different circumstances, I'd rather laugh. My point, the relative value of things. Here you talk about the value of moving people to register, and then from moving people registered to vote. But in the middle, we need to teach people why, who, what is at stake, what do we have together that we need to keep alive. I just got back from Italy and Germany and Israel, where we learned about water and opening trade missions, and we got a briefing on Ukraine from the United States Army. And what is the value of a nation that is divided versus the value and strength of a nation that recognizes that unity, the value of unity, is more important than almost anything to hold us together. God family, and not just country, but a unified country on issues that are valuable to us. I am thankful very much that I can remember the red crescent on that man's eye as they contemplated my death, on the mouth of my daughter as she whispered of her love for her mother. In our last visit, we got 1 hour after 34 days of being quarantined. I remember the value of her mouth. And I remember the value of what it takes to be an American, to work together for the good of the unity of our country. Thank you very much.
Speaker Russell Bowers, Arizona Speaker of the House. Please welcome to this stage Ms. Joyce Lamar, President of the League of Women Voters of Texas and moderator of the Impact of Historical Disenfranchisement and Discrimination. She is joined by Anise Parker, former Houston mayor and president of the Victory Fund, Maria Town, president and CEO of the American Association of People with Disabilities, Christina Ramirez, president of Next Gen America, Isabel Coronado, research scholar at NYU Marone Institute of Urban Management, and Lieutenant Nicholas Little of the United States Navy.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and happy National Voter Registration Day. I am Joyce LeBombard, President of the League of Women Voters of Texas. We are a nonpartisan political organization, and people ask us, well, how can you be nonpartisan and political? That is because we never, ever support or oppose any political party or candidate. But we do take positions on important public policy issues like voting rights, and we do advocate on those. And so that's how we are a nonpartisan political organization. Our mission is empowering voters and defending democracy, and I get choked up every time I have to say that. So I just love that mission. With that, I'm going to go around. Why don't we start on my right, and we'll just introduce yourself and your organization.
Hello. Hische Stongo. My name is Isabel Coronado. I'm a citizen of the Muskogee Creek Nation that's located in present-day Oklahoma. I'm a change maker with the New Deal for Youth. I am a researcher at NYU, and I'm also a daughter of a formerly incarcerated mother. I'd also like to take a moment real quick to recognize the original people of Houston, the Kakastwa tribe, as well as all the indigenous tribes that have contributed to our democracy more than all of us know. And I would challenge everyone here today to go to www.native-land.ca and look up the land that you live or you work on and understand those, the people that were there before, past, present, and future. Thank you.
And my name is Christina Sensun Ramirez. I'm the president of Next Gen America, the country's largest youth voting rights organization that last election helped mobilize 1 in 9 young people across the country, leading to the largest youth voter turnout in American history, which we should all clap for. And though we're nationwide, I am the new president of the organization and live here in the greatest state in the country, Texas, and am proud to just have come from one of the 186 sites across the country where we're registering voters, from Texas Southern University, where we were seeing the future of Texas politics in my mind, young black women registering, black girl magic happening at Texas Southern University that's going to transform Texas.
I'm Anise Parker. I was introduced as the former mayor of Houston, and it was the highest honor of my life to do that. But I currently am president and CEO of the LGBTQ Victory Fund and Victory Institute based in Washington, D.C. I hasten to say I still live in Houston. I never have moved away. But what we do as an organization is focus on elevating LGBTQ leaders to public office. We love and respect our allies, but we don't work with allies. We don't do policy, we don't do lobbying. We do people because we believe that our democracy is stronger when all of us are represented. Victoryfund.org or victoryinstitute.org if you'd like to find out more.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Town, and I serve as the president and CEO of the American Association of People with Disabilities. I would be remiss if I did not mention that I'm the former director of the Houston Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. And at AAPD, we are a national cross-disability civil rights organization that seeks to build the political and economic power of all 60 million disabled Americans across the country. Because voting is a key part of building our power, we run the Rev Up initiative. Rev Up stands for Register, Educate, Vote, Use Your Power. And while today is National Voter Registration Day, last week was Disability Voting Rights Week. So across the country, 44 different Rev Up disability state voting coalitions, registered voters, held candidate forums, educated disabled people on their rights, and so much more. Again, I said 44 states, not all 50. So if there's not a Rev Up coalition in your state, please follow up with me, aapd.com, if you want to learn more information. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicholas Little. I'm sorry. Let me go back on that. I am Lieutenant Nicholas Little of the United States Navy. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I also work for the United States Department of State here in Houston. I'm a sex trafficking investigator. And more importantly, why I'm here today to advocate also for veterans. I'm currently the sitting NAACP Houston Branch Armed Services Veteran Affairs Chair. So I just want to thank you guys for having me. And more importantly, I just want to highlight all the youth that are in the building. Oftentimes, young people are not invited to the table to these conversations, so it's so good to see you guys, and I hope that you guys' voices are utilized to the fullest extent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. It's such an honor and a privilege to be on stage with you all and with everyone out in the audience. I do have to mention I was at the Texas Disability Rights Issue Forum yesterday, and Rev Up Texas has done a fabulous flash mob video that you must go see. So go to, I think it's revuptexas.org. And look at their Don't Diss the Vote. It is just inspiring, just very, very inspiring. So something near and dear to my heart is making it easier for voters to understand what is on the ballot. What do you think local governments can do to make it easier for voters to understand what is on their ballot?
So one thing, and this is funny because this was brought up in an earlier breakout session, is breaking down what's on the ballot, so that breaking it up into bullet points. We can go even further, breaking up in the videos, because everyday people, unless you're studying this or working in this area, jargon is jargon, and it's really hard to understand jargon if you're not in that world. And so breaking that down into smaller, bite-sizable pieces for people to understand what's on the ballot and how it's going to impact their life is just going to further move our mission to have people empowered to keep coming back to the ballot.
You know, the number one reason why a person will say that they don't vote is because they simply don't know who to vote for. And we're in a midterm, right? And we know that there's lower voter turnout across the country. At NextGen, we know that a lot of young people, and we never blame young people, and we should never blame people for not knowing there's an election or what's on the ballot. It's not that people don't care, it's that we have in this country underinvested in civics education, which is intentional. And so we spend time and energy reaching millions of young people with ballot guides, and we all know that if you need a ballot guide to give someone that is nonpartisan, to tell them how to vote, the League of Women Voters does the best ballot guides in every state in the country. But it's important to not just assume and tell people, go vote. But we are all here influencers to be able to tell family members, community members, who you're voting for and why, and what's the difference, and then give them resources as well. So we're printing close to 2 million ballot guides that we're distributing on campuses across the country to make sure that young people know who's on the ballot, what's on the ballot, up and down the ticket, and make sure that they know they have the knowledge to vote for candidates that stand up on the issues that they care about.
League of Women Voters does do the best voter guides, and having been a long-time supporter of the League of Women Voters, I'm really glad that you continue to do that work. But before you even get to the point of educating about who is on the ballot, we have to go back even a step further than that, and that the voting process itself is intimidating to a lot of folks. When Victory works mostly down ballot races all across the country. We are bipartisan, although I will state very clearly that there are very few LGBT Republicans out there who are willing to claim that space. And because we do work with down ballot candidates, we're often in marginalized communities, and just the idea of, I'm afraid, I don't know what to do with the machine itself. I don't know what they're going to ask me. I don't know what to do when I come in. So we have to take there's the long term, which is the civics education. There's the slightly shorter term, which is making sure that you show people, you take the electronic machines, you take sample ballots, you walk people through how to cast their ballots, what kind of ID they're going to need. But you also have to then move to the shorter term work, which is who's actually on the ballot right now and why does it matter to me, and connecting the dots. I talked to people across the country, primarily young people, but not always, and it's, I don't know who to vote for and why does it matter? So if we can't get to the why, we're never going to solve the problem.
Building on Mayor Parker's point, I would add, if you all are doing an event where you have a ballot marking device, make sure it's an accessible ballot marking device. One of my proudest moments when I worked for the city of Houston was hosting a White Cane Safety Day event where we worked with the county office to bring out an accessible ballot marking device of all of the vendors that we had. And we had snow cones, we had face painting, right? We had all of these wonderful services. The thing with the longest line was the accessible ballot marking machine, because there were so many blind people who never knew that they could vote independently and anonymously. And so all of you who are planning civic events, have one of these devices at every event, right? And not just the devices, information about what's on the ballot. We've had a lot of discussion about candidates, but it's not just candidates who are on the ballots, right? These ballot propositions. How is your water going to get to you? How is your electricity going to be managed? How is your trash going to be picked up? I see Mayor Turner, he's looking at me. How are your potholes going to get filled, right? That's what's on the ballot. And I think explaining that to all of your community is so important because that's what's going to motivate people to vote. And doing so at every opportunity, not just the week, 2 weeks, month before the election. One of the things that I think about constantly is that voting is only one piece of being involved in the democratic process. And of course, you all host public forums, information sessions, but those kinds of sessions are only going to reach a small part of your community, of your populations. But all of these other municipal services, whether it's, again, paying your electricity bill, handling your speeding tickets, right? Individuals interact with those services on a regular basis. Why not have information about what's on their ballot there? Thank you.
Man, that's hard to follow up. But just to elaborate on what's been said, because all of you guys have hit some great points. More important, I think, out of all of it is educate. People have to be educated on what's on the ballot, what it's about, and making sure that whoever they're voting for fits the standard of the platform in which represents them and their livelihood and their family. Another thing that's really big is accessibility. Accessibility is vital. That's probably the more important thing anyway, because we have to make sure people are able to get to the polls, whether we are concerned about their transportation, whether they're concerned about them being able to get to the poll and not feel intimidated by anyone as they're working the polls, making sure that people feel safe and making sure that they feel like their vote that they're casting is safe in a democracy such as this. And it's just very important also that we mobilize people to vote, make sure we mobilize them to understand the importance of voting, and make sure that we get them to understand that you get the other person beside you, your brother, your sister to your left, or your brother, sister to your right, to make sure they understand the importance and they vote as well. Because voting it's written in the Constitution. It is our right as Americans. It's one of the things that make this the greatest country in the world. It's because we know how to utilize our democracy and vote. Thank you.
Thanks. So in a work session, I was at the breakout session that I was in, we talked about incarcerated and people who are incarcerated and how can we engage them and get them to vote. How can local governments engage those who are incarcerated or have recently been released and are eligible? I know one of the things we talked about was oftentimes those who are incarcerated don't even know that they're allowed to vote. So what are some things that the local government or other organizations could be doing to help that? Anise, can I pick on you first?
Not an area in which I have a lot of expertise. I'm going to pivot a little bit, as a good politician does, and actually talk about the fact that we also, just because you don't have a permanent resident doesn't mean that you shouldn't have access to the ballot. So I'm going to talk about homelessness, which overlaps with the issue of the formerly incarcerated. And one of the things that cities can do as part of their homeless outreach work is to make sure that there are obviously permanent housing, but absent that, permanent addresses and ID access for folks who are homeless. That is, the ID access is a huge problem for a range of social services, but it also has a big impact at the ballot box.
So I think, when we talk about the formerly incarcerated and gaining greater access, I think we also have to acknowledge the fear that exists with those that are formerly incarcerated. We're here in Texas, where we have the infamous case of Crystal Mason, mother of 3, who since 2016 has been fighting a prison sentence of 5 years for casting a provisional ballot that was never even counted, that a poll worker told her she could cast. And when we talk about the formerly incarcerated, we also have to acknowledge the role that race plays. That of the 5.3 million disenfranchised Americans because of felony convictions that are across the country, 40% are black, even though the African American population makes up just 12% of the overall population in this country. And that when we look at the root of where did these laws come from to bar people with felony convictions, they are directly linked to Jim Crow. The first places in the country where these laws originated from were after the passage of the 15th Amendment. And you saw in southern states laws come up with poll taxes, literacy tests, and barring people with felony convictions. So because of that, we have to say, one, there are things that local governments can do, that every single county jail needs to make sure that there is registration access and voting access because those are pre-conviction. And two, as people come out having paid their time, that if you are in a state where former felons are not allowed to vote, every municipal government should be demanding their municipalities tell their state government that if you are born in this country with the right to vote, you should die with that right to vote, and no one should ever take it away from you. So it's at the local level, in the jails, and as people leave, and then demanding racist policy be changed, because ultimately that is the root cause of why these laws existed, and I simply do not believe that in a democracy we should ever prohibit people from voting.
Yeah, I'd like to add to everything you just said, but I have firsthand knowledge watching my mother, who was formerly incarcerated, try to get her voting rights back. So I'm from Oklahoma, and so a state that is very harsh on people with felony convictions to get their right to vote back. It took her years to pay back her restitution fees before she could get her voting right back. She became an attorney before she could get the right to vote back. And so just right off firsthand knowledge, I never took it for granted, because seeing her, who my mom was my role model, go through those struggles and understanding that. But she's not the only one going through these struggles. There's 44,000 collateral consequences, or as my former colleague would say, perpetual punishments that impact formerly incarcerated people, from housing to jobs, and especially voting. And so we have so many different things that we could do differently. But again, one of them is, since state by state it's so different on who's allowed to vote and when, do you need to get a pardon, do you need to pay your fines and fees? I think we just need to get that straight, because disinformation is harmful. Also, registration deadlines, voter ID laws, limited access to registration, form jail, and slow jail mail is another barrier. And just like my friend right next to me was saying about jails, people who are currently in jail, which I just read today, 445,000 people who haven't even been convicted of a crime yet don't have access to right to vote. So just right there, an easier entry to barriers on how local governments can start working with people in jails is coming to them. I think that's just the plain and simple, coming to them and meeting them where they're at.
You know, there's a lot of systems that are in play with this, and with the history of institutionalization that has built the penal system that we know is the prison system in the United States. As stated by the lovely ladies over here, you know, it's a problem, and it has to be addressed. It's important that we recognize that people that are incarcerated are still people. They're still human beings. You know, I was talking with someone earlier today about that, about how people can go and you know, be sentenced for their crime and go and do their time and pay their debts to society, as the justice system will label it. But then when you get out, you still have this dark cloud hanging over your head. You know, so it's like, even though I've done what I've done, and I have remorse, and I've paid the price for it, even when I come out, for the rest of my life, unless I have some type of help or assistance with getting this seat or a sponge, I still got to pay the price for this for the rest of my life, one way or another. And I think that once we begin to realize that we have to break some of these systems that are withholding rights, God-given rights, that every American citizen deserve and have, we will be able to see our nation turn a tide towards a more positive aspect of life, instead of us constantly thrusting ourselves into a forceful situation that puts our citizens in danger and close to a crumbling democracy.
So I agree with all of the points that have been mentioned on this stage, but I just wanted to add that According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 2 in 5 or 4 in 10 of every incarcerated person in the United States is a person with a disability. These are the disabilities that we know about, right? So we can assume that the actual portion of people with disabilities in prisons and jails, or those who are recently released, is much higher. So when we think about co-locating all of these services, as has been mentioned, we have to think about accessibility. Another population that is growing in our prisons and jails are seniors, older adults. And this has a lot to do with the need for sentencing reform. Some people were young adults when they went in, and by the time they come out, they're older adults. So the ways in which they may need to get to their polling place could be very different. So not only thinking about making sure people have accurate IDs, have paid their fines, but also how to use paratransit, right? How to get to the accessible polling place, because the polling place in their neighborhood is not accessible, as 80% of all polling places in the United States are not. So we have to think about, as has been mentioned, all of the intersecting identities of these individuals. I think many formerly incarcerated people or incarcerated people would say, you know, this does not define me, although, and you cannot let it define me for the rest of my life. So again, we need to think about access across every piece of this, including how we encourage formerly incarcerated people to vote. Thank you.
So as leaders of various organizations, what can local governments do to make it easier to work with you and you to work with them on getting out the vote? And not just organizations like ours, but businesses. I know the League, a while back, we tried to start up the Civic Engagement Alliance with businesses and stuff, and it was just really difficult to work through. And so what creative ideas have you used or employed to work with the local governments in terms of getting out the vote? Maria?
On the business question specifically, I think it can be very easy for a business to say, voting isn't our business. We want to stay away from that. We don't want to be political. In reality, democracy is everyone's business. Right? And I think as local leaders, both civic leaders and our elected leaders, we have to be willing to say that. And then come to the table with some recommendations. I'm an advocate, so I always have an agenda, a platform. As a city leader, making sure that your employees can be poll workers, can have time off to vote. One of the things that we need desperately is not only more poll workers, but diverse poll workers, right? We need poll workers who will help ensure that Black, Latine voters, that tribal voters, that disabled voters feel safe when we go to the polling place. We need poll workers who understand the issues that affect our communities, and if cities have representative governments, which I know you all strive for, allow your employees time off to become poll workers, and you encourage other businesses in your communities to do the same. Have folks put up resources to support accessible transit. Work with employers, particularly large employers in your area, to host an issues forum. Employees get a free lunch, and you get to hear about Proposition B that's going to be on your ballot, right? You don't have to go at 7 p.m. across town to go to this forum. These are very practical things that businesses can do to encourage workers and their community members to vote without taking a side, because again, democracy is everyone's business.
So I've recognized since I've lived in Houston, just the various organizations and the various businesses that are willing to collaborate and work together. I've seen through serving in the Houston Area Urban League, and I saw Mr. Judson Robinson here earlier, and I was well serving in NWCP and being a Rotarian, I've seen so many businesses come together and work together and look at it not as a political thing, but just for the betterment of human rights and for the people. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. The Constitution states for the people, by the people, and of the people of the United States. And as long as our business partners and as our civic leaders and our elected officials keep that in mind, there's no way that we should falter at maintaining our democracy and ensuring that the election process is safe and the collaboration between the community and its partners is sustained. Thank you.
You know, we're very lucky to be here in Houston. Many mayors that are co-hosting this event, but also Mayor Turner that brought us together here. You know, at NextGen, when we came into Texas, because when they hired me to come to the organization, I said, I won't take it unless you come to Texas, because Texans think we're the center of the universe. But the first thing we did is we reached out to the local mayors of all of our major metro areas and asked them, would they be partners in making sure that young people could get registered? Would they be leaders that would kick open doors for us and make sure that people knew about the importance in the work and that we were connecting with the right local institutions? And so we're lucky that Mayor Turner was one of the first people to sign on, along with all of the many other mayors in the major metro areas of Texas. I don't believe that our work as organizations can work without good elected leadership at the local level, more than anything, helping us do this work, connecting with libraries, connecting to schools, connecting to other businesses. And the other thing is, when we talk about local businesses, we were proud in San Antonio to partner with the LGBT Chamber of Commerce that had us come to an event and then helped us connect to other businesses that then opened their doors for us to do voter registration and engage their employees. So it was stated, democracy is everyone's business, and we are all democracy defenders in this role. And so there's so much we can do at the local level, even more so in my mind than at the state and national level.
I'm getting the signal that we got to wrap up very quickly, which is too bad because we got some other great questions and conversations to have. So if everyone can just really quickly, there's a lot we can do, but if folks in this audience want to walk away with one lesson today, what do you think the number one most important thing local leaders can do to ensure all voters in their communities have access to the democratic process? And we do have to be quick, so.
So I was going to tie this into the last one, but switching over to working with tribal communities, I think the number one thing is when I saw local elected officials coming onto my reservation to try and work with our tribal members, a third of our tribal members are living under the poverty line. And so asking us to do work for free is unacceptable. And it's really disheartening seeing bills that are being placed that are prohibiting people to be paid for election education work, because that's pivotal. And especially if you want people from our own communities that should be doing the work anyways, we have to pay them. So the number one thing I would have to say walking out of it is pay these people.
My biggest thing I would have to say is engage young people. Young people are the next generation. They are the ones who are carry the torch. Those individuals back in the back, those young people, wave your hands. I see you back there. I talked to you earlier. That is the future. We want to make sure that we equip them with all the tools that they need to carry out the mission, which is to make sure that all individuals, whether they're young or old, are properly represented in our democracy. And we want to ensure that everyone has the right to vote and utilizes that. Thank you.
I was just going to say that I think we need to understand that democracy is perhaps the greatest tool ever created by man to foment change. And because it is so powerful, that there will always be powers that try and usurp that power, because it is the great equalizer. And that we are living in very tenuous times where some people have called the insurrection a legitimate form of political debate, where across the country there are voter suppression bills. And so because of that, we are all democracy defenders in this moment. And so I think people should go home that get to have the honor and privilege to lead a local community and say, what am I doing in my role to defend democracy? And how am I making it easier and more accessible for people to vote so that the people get to pick their candidates instead of the politicians picking their voters?
don't forget about the individuals in congregate settings. Just because someone is in a nursing home, a group home, or a state facility does not mean they should lose their right to vote.
One group that I want to talk about and we haven't had an opportunity to yet is the number of trans folks out there who don't have appropriate ID. We could spend hours talking about ID laws, but there are some 400,000 trans individuals who live in states where they must vote in person. And half of those do not have IDs that match their physical appearance. So not only do they have to deal with the fact that all of the other barriers to access, but if they show up at the polls and present that ID, will they be allowed to vote? Many of those states actually require that if you want to change your gender markers on a driver's license or some other form of ID, you must, at your own expense, publish a notice in the newspaper with your name and address and what you're planning to change to. So you have to make yourself vulnerable to attack in order to get the appropriate ID. Now that covers a range of things beyond voting, but I want you to think about what it means to someone to show up at the polls with an ID that does not look, that is actual information about them, but does not reflect their picture on that ID.
Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to Mayor Turner and all of the mayors for bringing us together for this important conversation. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mayor Aquanetta Warren of Fontana, California, to be joined by Clarence Anthony, Executive Director of the National League of Cities.
It is indeed an honor to be around all of you today, listening to these great conversations. I think that I'll stand by the hotel door tomorrow afternoon and watch you all run out and do your thing, and then I'll take pictures of you and take them back home. But as you're aware, when we come together, we all get excited and we all feel good about what we've done. But the real work starts when we leave this building. But I'm going to introduce a gentleman here that the real work starts the minute he wakes up in the morning. And he is over the National League of Cities. So please put your hands together for Mr. Clarence Anthony.
Thank you very much, Mayor Warren, who has been an amazing leader throughout America on a lot of public policy issues with other organizations. So, wasn't the lunch speaker compelling? Wasn't he amazing, Mr. Speaker? Thank you so much. I mean, it really makes you refocus about what is important. And all of us, for the last, I would say, 3 years, if we really pause for a minute and take a breath, we're all different than we were before the pandemic. I don't know anyone that I've met since those 2.5 years that has not reflected on the blessing and the value of life, the value of love, the value of friendship, and the value of just being an individual. I think that as we look at the last, or at least today, I keep coming back to that question of why we are here. Why is it important that you're spending this amazing time? Now, I never, ever stay on or use talking points because it just don't work for me. So anyway, I need to find out your why. Why is this event important to you? Are you shy? Child, you sitting in the front. Don't ever sit in the front if you're shy. You ready? Your why? Why is this event important to you?
Similar to a lot of things we've been talking about throughout this convention, as a black woman, I've seen my ancestors not be afforded this right, and other historically marginalized communities be disenfranchised. And I think it's so important now that we have that right to exercise it and protect it, and that's my why.
Thank you. Mayor Weber from Santa Fe, New Mexico, beautiful city. Why are you here? Why is it important?
Democracy, America, end of story.
Whoa. All right, there's one person who's been smiling all day at me. Tamika, how you doing? I don't even know you. You just got this amazing way. What's your why? I know corporately HNTV, but that ain't what I want to find out. What's your why, personally?
I think, like a lot of those who are represented around the room, I look back at, I was raised by my grandmother, and she was very passionate about the right to vote, the right for change. And when I look at my son, who's now 27, I want to make sure that he understands that right as well, and so that our future is continuously paved by our next generation of changers, you know. And so I think it's because of just the things that I've dealt with in my past with my grandmother and what she wanted to see move forward, and the things that I aspire to see move forward as well with my son.
Thank you. Janice, how are you? From Washington State, y'all. Janice, what is your why? Why is this important?
Well, I would say as a naturalized citizen who's an immigrant, I think a lot about the fact that we didn't always have the right to vote either. And ultimately, our vote is our voice. And no one should be able to take that voice away from us. And that's it.
That's pretty important. All right, I'm going back here. Kathy Manus. Kathy is from Lexington, South Carolina. I know your party, but I ain't going to tell nobody. You can do it if you want. What's your why this is important?
Because I want more than 5% of people who are registered to vote in South Carolina to vote. And that's what happened in our last election. So I want to be able to encourage more people to get out there and do it and get them registered. And I am proud to say, since I turned 18 years old, and you know that was a long time ago, that I have voted in every election that I've had the opportunity to vote in.
Oh, wow. All right, my final one. You got such a bright smile and eyes and everything. Oh, I'm talking about you. You. What's your why? Hi.
My why is it's very important that everyone is engaged in the political system.
All right. So now I'm going to do what I was supposed to do. Okay, we're about to go into breakout groups again. And it's very important as you go into these breakout groups, I think that you really kind of think about your why. And the issues that you're going to talk about really goes into, I hope that you'll take your why into your discussions this afternoon. We've talked a lot about the youth and young adults, and we talk about the future of democracy. In room 335 AC on the 3rd floor, we really need to dig into that a lot, because if we're going to produce a document that gives specific tools and ideas so that you will own your piece of this movement that Mayor Hancock talks about a lot. That is really an important breakout group to be a part of. Because, again, as we reflect on our journey, they're starting theirs in a lot of ways. So I do think being able to share some experiences. Our next breakout group is focused on LGBTQ plus issues and the democratic process. And that group will meet in Grand Ballroom L on the 4th floor. And finally, our group, Disability Community, focused on the disability community, building an inclusive voting experience. And we've had a number of references to how we are inclusive in all of our approach and thoughtful in all of our approaches. I do think that that group is very, very key, especially as we look at legislatures all over the country. Maybe we could say creating barriers, but not opening up as much to that community. And that group will meet in Grand Ballroom I on the 4th floor. So I hope that you guys will really take your why. And as we listen to the speaker today, and I was whispering to our mayor, I was like, Mayor, I bet that takes you back to the days of the legislature when you really had to figure out a way not just to get 6 votes or 10 votes or 12 votes on your city council. The House members are a lot more difficult to come to some consensus. As we go into our groups, let's think about those difficult challenges. Don't take on the easy things. It's easy to say that, yeah, we'll tell people how to get educated or what on the issues. Let's come up with something really tough, for a challenge that we know is really tough, like believing, especially a black man in America right now, the system that exists, a lot of times, there's that real skepticism. How do we work deep to do something transformative? Because we didn't just come here to come. I don't come to places just to come. I come because I want to make an impact. So let's go. Let's go get in our groups. Let's do our breakouts. And let's continue to think about our why and challenge ourselves so that we can come with some solutions. All right, y'all have a good afternoon, and thank you all very much.